Hey everybody, welcome to the Fernandez Bros Show. I'm Bodie.
And I'm Aikman.
And today we're going to be talking to you guys about some tournament director tips. This is episode 1 and hopefully a very long series of episodes of this podcast. Let's hop straight into it with tournament director tips.
So me and my brother Bodie have hosted 4 events this year in 2022. We hosted them all throughout Arizona, mainly in the Valley, but we did a tournament also up in Prescott. So this year, as novice tournament directors, we learned a lot of things through experiences and feedback. So I have accumulated with my brother a bunch of tips.
I also have some tips that I think are going to help you all out a lot, especially you newer tournament directors, the ones that are just getting into tournament directing. Maybe you just want to host an event for fun. Maybe it's unsanctioned. Whatever it is, we have some tips for you. Nathan, you can start.
So from personal experience, we have learned that one of the most important things at your events is signage. So our last event, our event at Prescott at the Watson Lake, we weren't able to get signage in time for the event, and we weren't entirely sure if we were allowed to put signage up at the course. And so we learned that we were, and we weren't able to get any signage there in time. So for our first round, we didn't have any signage, and that meant recreational players got into the course and started playing that, interrupted the professionals. We had professionals out there, some local pros and our other players. It kind of ruins the flow. There were some choke points that were being created, bottlenecks. So signage is really important because when we confronted 2 players, I should say they confronted us because they fought back. We calmly approached them and, just simply stated to leave the course because we had reserved the park, we had gone to the city. They said that if it wasn't written in stone, if there was no signage, they weren't going to listen to us. And we told them that we had reserved the park, we went to the city, but they didn't listen because they said there was no signage. So coming from personal experience, signage is super important. You need to have that stating that there's going to be disc golfers on the course, there's going to be an event that day, that it's been reserved, that you shouldn't be on the course. So signage is super important.
I think that's true. I think that a big problem with some parks is that they actually don't allow signage. That's also one of my tips. Make sure your city allows signage on that park. Our second event at Los Olivos, great little 9-hole course down in the valley. We had 2 actual hole sponsorships, which if you are a tournament director that has been doing tournament directing for a long time, you will know that hole sponsorship is a great way to make money because you're pretty much keeping all of the money out of that. You don't have to give any of that to the PDGA or anything. So it was very disappointing, but the city for Los Olivos said that we couldn't put we couldn't put the signs on the park. So we just put the signs next to the table. We didn't engrave them into the park, but make sure your city does allow whole sponsorships and allow signs for the park, because that is a huge part of, like what Aikman said, keeping people off the course and also of representing the whole sponsors.
So another thing that we have learned is that you have to be very clear and descriptive about your course rules and your hazards, your OBs, your island hole rules. So at our last event at Watson Lake, there were 2 island holes on holes 16 and 18. And so I thought I had been descriptive enough in the course notes on the PDGA live scoring app. I thought I was descriptive enough. And apparently I was not. People were able to make arguments and cases and try to debate. And so I just, going back and looking at it, I realized where I went wrong. I said that you had to be inside the rock boundary because there was a rock boundary around the pin. I said you had to be inside of the rock boundary to be counted as in. So players started saying that if they were touching the inside of the rock boundary, so just touching the rock boundary, like the inside of the rocks, if they weren't touching the beyond the rocks, because that was my intention. I wanted people to cross the rock boundary and be inside of it. I didn't want people to be touching it and counting it. I wanted it to, be inside and safe. And then, people were able to make arguments saying, like, because PDGA does say in the rules that OB lines count as the OB itself. So I was figuring that the rock line should have been out of bounds and you'd be inside. But people were able to make the argument that, if you're touching inside is safe and you're touching OB, that you're still safe. So people were able to find loopholes and they were able to make arguments, And so I wasn't clear and descriptive enough. And so that's important You need to make sure that your yes is yes and your no is no, that there's no room for debate, there's no room for loopholes. You need to be clear and descriptive, or else people could take advantage of that and they won't play the course the way that it was designed or that you envisioned for the tournament.
My second tip is you need to reply to your emails, your disc golf scene, inbox, comments, anything that you have, social media, anything, reply to them as fast as you can, because a lot of tournament directors don't, and that is a huge problem because some people have major questions about lodging, depending on if they're out of state.
If it's time sensitive?
Yeah, they have a lot of questions, so replying to your customers and your possible customers as fast as you can is very important.
Okay. My next point is making tee times clear. That's really important. So if you have a large course, like our Watson Lake event, I keep referring back to this because we learned a lot from that event. It's a huge course. It's pretty wide. It's broad. And so what we should have done was, yelled to the cards in our vicinity by the check-in area, that 5 minutes, or we should have brought a bullhorn, that would have been important. And because of that, players were practicing before the round started, and people then thought they were teeing off early, and it just created kind of a mess. So if you're able to clearly state when your tee times are, that helps, and it gets rid of a lot of confusion.
My third, kind of fourth tip here is just know that there's going to be haters. In any event, no matter what you do, if it's out of the park, no matter what, there's always going to be haters, and there's always going to be some sort of feedback. So actually, kind of two tips in one. Take feedback well, because some feedback is very important. It's very good for the growth of the sport and also for the growth of your events. Also, sometimes just know there's going to be haters, and that even if you throw in great events and 99% of the people liked it, there might always be that 1% who's going to hate it. There's always going to be haters, and just know that, because coming into these events, no matter how hard you put into them, you think that you've done a great job, there might be a hater. So just know that you are doing a great job, but there always is going to be a hater.
We've heard it been said by other tournament directors that we've talked to that the tournament directing is a thankless job, that you will get good feedback, you'll get compliments for what you did right, but it doesn't matter if you do everything right. Like Bodie said, there's always going to be that complaining and that nagging. So you just got to learn to be thick-skinned and be able to take it. So another thing that we learned is that before you host an event at a course, that you have to be able to understand that course. The course traffic, that was one thing that we learned about Watson Lake, is that we played the front nine before, we didn't play the back nine, and we thought the course was a great place to host an event, and it was, but we should have understood the course a little bit more about like the course traffic, the mandatories, the OB, and we should have known more things going into it before our event, and because of that, there was some confusion. We didn't quite understand the course as much as we should have. So you need to understand the course, play the course, talk to locals, get advice about the course if you're going into a new course before. Our advice is stick with the courses that you already know. For example, a course that we're very familiar with is Contecito. We can host events there regularly and easily because we understand that course. We play it all the time, and it's just familiar to us. So be familiarized with the course before you host an event there.
Okay, a tip I have is always have water at the park. This is a thing we've had since our second event on to now. Have water at the park, because there's going to be times when it's very hot, especially in the summer in the valley. It can get up to 100 degrees, 90 degrees very easily early in the morning. So always have water, and it's just great for your players, and it's just really, really, really kind to do. A lot of tournaments don't have that, and it's just a nice thing to do.
One thing that you do need to consider is the way that you place your water.
That is very true.
Like, we bring 2 ice chests, and we're supposed to place them strategically throughout the course at certain points where you're going to run out of water. And also another point is to create less waste, make sure people aren't littering.
Pack in, pack out.
Pack in, pack out. Make sure that those ice chests or your gallons, your tubs, whatever you're bringing your water in, make sure that they're close to a trash can. Like if you're bringing plastic water bottles full of like purified water. Bring those and put those next to trash cans. That way, players could just throw away the bottle afterwards. We're trying to make sure that littering is minimized at these events. So another thing that we learned through our events is if you're going to be working with the PGA site and the tournament manager page, is if you're doing a 2-round event, which we did our first 2-round event at Watson, and so we learned from our feedback is that some players got confused because we had our tee times at 12:50, and we got tee times up around, I want to say 12:40, so we had about 10 minutes before that. So players wanted more time beforehand to be able to get to their holes, maybe practice a little bit, and understand when they need to get back to the course from lunch. So have your second round assignments and tee times up quick and long before your second round. That way players are able to get, again, familiarized with the course and get to where they need to go.
Also, this is just kind of a tip that I have, kind of off of Aikman, not off of Aikman, kind of working towards Aikman point. Always make sure you have 1-hour lunches.
Mm-hmm.
Start the 1 hour after the last card is done, because 45-minute lunches, I know it's just 15 minutes less than an hour, but still, an hour lunch is nice. You get to eat your lunch, enjoy it, and then come back to the park about 30 minutes early and warm up. So just make sure you have an hour lunch and count that hour right after the card, or right after the last card's done.
So one big thing is taking safety into consideration during your event. So at our Watson Lake event, it's a lake, and the course sits kind of on a hilltop next to the lake. So there was on hole 9 kind of a rocky crag, and it went up like 20, 30 feet, and then there was a huge drop off of a cliff, like 50, 60 feet into the lake, and so that was a kind of a safety hazard. Now, we would have thought that players would have taken, relief, and there was one player who did not. He instead decided to play on the crag and play near that cliff, and so other players had feedback. They were like, we played hole 9, and we thought it was kind of dangerous. And so, because the basket, in the position that it was 30 feet away from that cliff. So what we could have done was, we could have reinforced in the players' minds to take relief. We should have made that more clear. We thought it would have been clear, but apparently it wasn't. Another thing is making mandatories an OB where it's necessary. So if you're playing most disc golf courses these days are on shared property with public parks. And so if you're hosting an event in one of those multi-use parks where it's a public park, you got playgrounds, you got your soccer fields, baseball fields, and you have your disc golf course, create mandatories to keep people away from throwing shots over like a soccer field, or make OB, make sidewalk and beyond OB to prevent players from throwing discs into streets and roads. That's another common thing. Take safety into consideration and make sure you plan around it and you create mandatories and OBs to keep players away from danger, like 50-foot drops or throwing into a pedestrian in a park during an event.
Also, I think I want to also add, players' meetings are super important.
Seriously.
Because all the players get their information about the course pretty much through that. And it's just very important. So you need to make sure that your players' meeting is on time, everyone's there, and that they know what they're supposed to do. Also, I want to talk to you guys also about check-ins. Here's a little tip. Early check-in saves so much time, especially throughout the day. The Watson Lake event, the park closed at 6. So we were on a very, very crunched time schedule since we had 2 rounds and an hour lunch break. So my advice to you is just make sure that you have early check-in the day before for huger events, so you can get 30, 40, 20 people out of the way, and so you only have to check in 60 people, 50 people, something like that, and it'll save a lot of time. And also you can start off things a little more early, like the check-ins and the players' meetings.
Yeah, that's huge, especially when you're trying to give out players packs.
Especially yes.
For amateurs, is that you don't always have all the time in the world on the day of the event to hand out players packs and check in people, especially like if Buddy was bringing up that point, if you have you're crunched for time and you have a really tight schedule. So having an early check-in the day before Like we went to the parking lot of the course up in Prescott the day before, and a bunch of amateurs came in. We were able to give them all their bags, and that saved us time the next day. Having early check-ins is something you might want to consider. It definitely saves a lot of time. One other... Go ahead.
A thing I kind of want to add is make sure that, like Aiko's already pretty much said this, but you seriously need to make sure that you have the 2 minutes, because, I mean, I know it's probably thinking through a new tournament objector's head, how am I going to get all the way from hole 1 to hole 12 on the other side of the park and try to get everyone to know that the 2 minutes are left. It's just normal tournament etiquette to one card tells the next card that's 2 minutes, and the next card tells the next card. So just make sure you tell them the 2 minutes, because it's very important, and it'll save a lot of time.
Yeah.
And a lot of heartache.
So another thing is when you're hosting an event that's going to be sanctioned, you're going to be doing a lot of work through the tournament manager page on the PDGA site. So when you're organizing cards, when players are signing up for the event, one thing that we learned through feedback from our local professionals and advanced players is that they do not like being in mixed divisions. Only mixed card divisions, only when necessary. So we weren't mixing the amateurs and professionals. Never mix the two. That goes against PDGA standards. We weren't doing that. But we were mixing similar divisions. Like
MA40s, MA50s.
Yeah. And we could have originally just kept it straight. Like, kept all the MA40 players in a card, kept all the MA50 players in a card. But we were mixing it up. I'm not sure why we were doing that. I'm pretty sure it was because originally, when I was organizing cards, there were a few outcasts on a few cards, so I was trying to make kind of a pattern, like 2 players from one division and 2 players from another division on the same card. I was just trying to make some of a pattern, but there were some complaints and a little bit of feedback, and so only mix divisions when necessary. Like if you have one outcast because you had an uneven division, like let's say you had 12 recreational and 13 advanced. When you go to start mixing them, you have that 13. You have that one last advanced player, so he has to go on a recreational card. Only in those situations do you mix the divisions. You only do it when necessary. Don't mix divisions.
Okay, everyone, that is all we have the time for today. Thank you all so much for watching this. Stay tuned because more podcasts will be coming weekly. We hope you all enjoyed. God loves you. God bless you. Have a great day, and bye.
Bye.